Good evening, everyone. We're gonna get started here. I know we still got some folks coming in, some good conversations happening. We'll get started. Thank you, everyone. This is great. Great to see everyone here. Great to see everyone excited about this. I know I'm very excited. This has been a great program to come together between Wenatchee River Institute, the Greater Leavenworth Museum, the Northwest Ski Hall of Fame, and the Leavenworth Winter Sports Club. So I really want to thank Matt and Georgia here for all the work they've done for this. So. Oh, Georgia's not pointing at Georgia. For this all to come together. So this is going to be a great program. My name is Joshua. I'm the community programs educator here at Wenatchee River Institute. And our mission here is to connect people, the community, and the natural world. And so through all of our programs, everything that we put together, there's a through line with one of those, and this is something that connects our community here. So I'm excited for that. Our mission, like I said, is to connect people and community and to the natural world. And so one of the ways we do that is through our youth programs. And just earlier today, we had a youth program here on our campus with some fourth graders who were doing some snow exploration. Not as much snow as we would like, but there's still some out there to explore. And so we saw them. They were here from Grant Elementary from East Wenatchee. And so they come all the way up here, and we get to do some outdoor education with them. The other part of our nonprofit is community programs, and so that's offerings like this Red Barn events. We put on workshops. We have seasonal walks like our snowshoe program, snowshoe strolls, and we have our community garden here. And just a highlight of a couple of events that we have coming up. We have another Red Barn coming up next week. It's on protecting rare plant species. That'll be a great talk. We have birding by the river, and we have 2 birding events that happen every month that are led by our other community educator here, Tucker, who's helping out on the sound table here. And then we have something called Science on Tap, where we have a speaker come, and it's a very casual kind of situation at a bar. We have that down at Ground Control in Wenatchee. So those are just some of our programs that we have. And if you want to learn about any of those or others, you can always look on our website, or you can get our email, our e-news. That's always the best way to get that information. Another aspect of WRI is our effort to connect the indigenous people to their ancestral land here. And so one way that we do that is through our land acknowledgement. And so I'm going to take the time to read our land acknowledgement. This land acknowledgement was created alongside the Shimpisquatchie people. We're spreading the message they wish to spread to the public. The land Wenatchee River Institute sits on is the ancestral homelands of the Shimpisquatchie, Pasquisa, or Wenatchee people. The Shimpisquatchie, meaning people in between, had villages positioned along the Wenatchee River and surrounding areas. Their ancestral homeland extends from the Cascade Ridge throughout what is now known as the Wenatchee and Okanagan valleys. Their culture and economy of the Shimpisquatchie people centers on taking care of the land. They fish, hunt, gather roots and berries, basket-making materials, and medicines. The Shimpisquatchie are named within the Yakima Treaty of 1855. Language to establish the Wenatchee Reservation was never followed through, even with the needed surveying completed. Many Shimpisquatchie now live on the Colville Reservation, 150 miles northeast of Leavenworth. They were forced off their land here, and the U.S. government moved them to this reservation. The Shimpisquatchie people are still alive today. They continue to practice their culture, harvest their traditional foods and medicines, and hold their ceremonies passed down from their ancestors. Most people won't see or notice them, but they continue to be on the land they're connected to. Their traditional language is in Hampchin, an interior Salish dialect. And I'd like to welcome you all by saying hello in their language, Tilhusht. Tilhusht. We offer this land acknowledgement as the first step to amplifying Indigenous voices and recognizing the harm done to them as a people. We stand as an ally to recognize their connection to the land and the rights to practice their culture on these sacred lands. We encourage all to learn about the Indigenous peoples of the place you now call home. The Wenatchee River Institute is committed to sharing this land acknowledgement and following up with other actions to educate and be respectful. All right. I'd also like to take the time to thank our sponsors. They're the ones that allow us to have these free events for our community. And our sponsors are the City of Leavenworth, Rhine House, Icicle Brewing Company, South Restaurants, North Central Washington Audubon Society, Munchen House, Sleeping Lady Mountain Resort, Sage Mountain Natural Foods, Gustav's, Obertal Inn, Chocolat, Bernhaus, Cove Resort at Fish Lake, Tierra Learning Center, Riverfront Rock Gym, and Rimmer and Reidar Construction. All right, so we are able to stream these events live. So we have a camera here so that people at home can watch this. You can also view it later on our YouTube channel. I'm sure you all might have questions for John, and so we're just going to save those questions to the end so that those online can also participate in that. One thing before we get started, I was just curious if this is the first event that you've been to for WRI. Is this your first WRI event? All right, yeah, so we have a couple of folks there, yeah. That's wonderful to see that when we have these programs that they bring new people to our campus here. So thank you and welcome. I'm going to first introduce, have Matt Cade from the Greater Leavenworth Museum come on up. He's going to share a little bit about what they're working on, and that they've been really great partners with us. So let's welcome Matt on up.
Thank you, Joshua. Is this working?
Yeah.
It is? Okay. I'll just talk real loud. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm glad to be here, glad to be part of this partnership, working these programs. It's wonderful that WRI has this facility, and they're sharing it with us so we can bring a quality program. John Lundin is one of the speakers at Georgia, one of our board members, and also she's with the Northwest Ski Museum. Found and brought in, and I think you'll be pleased to hear what he has to say about it. It's a great history lesson. A little bit about what we're doing. One of the new projects, we call ourselves a museum on the move because we're always doing something. And we've been down here on the new Front Street location for 3 years. And I've been walking around talking to people, which is what I do sometimes. And I have free passes for 2 people. So if I didn't get one of these to you over here in this area, here I kind of hit this area. If you want one of these free passes, we'd love to have you come down, see the museum, bring someone. We are open now daily throughout the year except for Thanksgiving and Christmas. This is an incredible feat for us as an organization. We are one of 2 museums in the North Central Washington core that are open daily. You've got all the big guys, but they are not open daily like we are. And we do that because of volunteers. If you are ever interested in any part of history, I don't care if you've been here, just moved here a year ago, 6 months ago, or you've been here for 12 years or 30 years, there's an opportunity to meet other people. I like to think that the museum has an opportunity to build a sense of community. we can do that by connecting people and their history. So it's really exciting. We're just doing so much. It's not like what you would have thought about museums. We're not just a little static thing. We don't do anything. We do constantly improving, and I like to think we have a good time doing it. This is our next project here. Who here knows about this, the history of the glockenspiel that's behind those two doors up there? If you want to raise your hand, if you know about the two, they're circled right up there, those two. Okay, well, a glockenspiel, they're all over Europe in Bavaria. That was installed in the year 1969. So we're going way back machine, 1969, when that first operated, this is one of the first 6 buildings in Leavenworth that was Bavarianized. They installed that at that time, Bob Price, Bob Rogers. And that glockenspiel on the hour would come out and dance. There's some figurines, and they would dance around. And they're, figurines that were carved by a local resident here, Kit Clark. No relation, right, Chris? No relation, Chris? Chris Clark, where are you? I saw you. Oh. She's hiding. Oh, yeah, there she is, Chris Clark. She's no relation to Chris Clark. Anyway, if we go to the next picture here, we're going to see a couple of people that are really key to this program. How do I do that? Whoa, cool. There's a button here. Okay, I learned something. At any rate, these two gentlemen here are key. Robert, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I just call him Robert. But he and his wife, Sherry, own that building. So they've got this thing up in their attic, which you can see in the background here, if I had an electronic pointer that I brought. But back there in the background are the 4 figurines that dance around. They're about this tall. It's really kind of cool. He's excited about doing this because he's been in that building with A Matter of Taste for almost 20 years. He and his wife, they just recently bought that building 2 years ago. They're really excited about this operating again. The last time it operated was in 2000. That's 22 years ago, 24 years ago, quarter of a century. That's when it broke. They didn't operate it after that. It was too costly. At any rate, so I have my neighbor here, Tom Phillips, who's, I'll introduce him later on, but Tom must have known about this thing. He came up to me one day and asked me, he says, Matt, what's going on with that glockenspiel up there? And I says, I don't know, Tom. I'll find out. And nothing was going on. At any rate, Tom says that thing is going to operate. So he's heading up a project team that's going to make this thing work. And if we go to the next slide here, if I can get there. There they are. There are the 4 people. Yeah, and they're about this tall, and they look kind of dirtied up. But I'll tell you what, when Tom's done with it and his crew, they will look brand new. And that's a very historic piece because it was built in 1969. So historically, as far as an historical artifact, we're really excited about this program. So I just want to share it with you because people that I've talked to that know about this thing, they're all just thinking this is going to be a great thing for the community. Hello. Yes, a question already.
I have been wondered about that. I was going to suggest somebody put that out there. Put a glockenspiel up there. When will that? Do you have any idea of when that might work?
Well, we've got to work some details out legally, get it all set up so that we can get funding, go out and get funding, grants and things. So once we get that straightened out, the estimate on that, I wouldn't want to press the person who's in charge of this on any particular date, but he's here in the room. He's right behind you. Tom Phillips, stand up.
Over 30 years ago, we used to watch this on the hour. Our kids who just couldn't believe it. And I found out there were a lot of people that came and they knew that this was operating, so they would come to watch it. And then I was just having a beer with Matt one night, and I didn't, what happened to the thing?
It was wine. We were having wine.
So, in answer to your question, we have a crew vetted. We have to work through the details with the building owner, and we feel pretty confident about that. And if I get everybody in line. I try to have it over by fall.
This fall?
This fall.
Oh,
But
good. Wonderful.
just a whole line of pieces to be put together right now.
Exactly.
We try to buy this.
Every little town in Germany has one of those.
Yeah. So we're really excited about it, and I'm only supposed to have been up here for 3 minutes. Sorry. You know, kind of hogging it. This was supposed to be a quick thing, in and out. Excited about all the details, because I'll tell you what, this is going to be really cool, and people would watch it. They'd set their clocks by this event, because on the hour it would come out, and it was a big attraction.
This thing is really cool. The operational of this is done by a garage door opener, a sprinkler controller. Yeah, it's just phenomenal how this is put together. We're trying to get the history of it. We heard at one time that the high school was got together and designed and made this, but we don't know that for sure.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Yeah, we're going to do the research on that. We've got some leads on some people that were involved in this, so we're excited about showing this history again. Yeah, that would be called, at my boss I used to work for, hillbilly ingenuity. Bless Frank, he grew up in Hobart. He was a hillbilly, but wonderful, smart guy, smartest guy I ever knew. And that's hillbilly right there. So anyway,
I'm wondering, that's bird poop all over the street.
that is. So that's not going to happen anymore. Tom knows how to fix it. So, okay, well, we've got to get moving. We've got to show here. That's the last slide. And thank you for all listening. I'm going to introduce our next guest. I want to introduce Torger Tokle, who is really the brains behind this particular event. She knows John Lundin, and we're just excited about her being on our board and has organized other programs, and you're going to see a lot more of Georgia, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of her too up here. So anyway, thank you. Thank you, Georgia.
Well, I'll try. Okay. Well, I am, as you said, on the board of GLM, Greater Leavenworth Museum. I'm also the president of the board of Northwest Ski Museum and the Ski Hall of Fame. If you haven't seen it already, the Hall of Fame is adjacent to the GLM in their hallway, and it's gorgeous, and it has 80-some inductees from the Northwest that are housed there. It has these wonderful little QR codes. You swipe it, and you can hear their wonderful bio. All the Bockies are in there. Earl Little, who was a promoter of the ski jumping way back when. If you look in the back corner, those little photos there are all the ski jumpers that were jumping here 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, into the 70s. And they're identified, all but one, identified by their names. But Shel Bocke used to say, you can tell them by their jumping style. He didn't need to know their names. He just said, wow, this person is this and this one does this. And these identify some of the current, the contemporary style and the current day styles. I want to introduce to you James Munley from the Leavenworth Winter Sports Club. Stand up for us, James. The Leavenworth Winter Sports Club is one of our sponsors tonight, and they have donated some raffle items, all-day play ski passes to the 3 different venues for Leavenworth Winter Sports Club. And if things padunk with the snow this year, they'll be good for next year. Not to worry. And we have 2 Mission Ridge day passes as well. So if you haven't gotten your raffle tickets, take advantage of that. It's quite a value. Anyway, we have something special to do tonight. We want to honor someone who has been really intricate in preserving the ski jumping history of Leavenworth and promoting further saving of that history. And one of the big things that he's done is he co-founded the Leavenworth Ski Hill Heritage Foundation in order to support the Leavenworth Winter Sports Club and further preserve the history of the jumping in the Leavenworth area. So we want to honor Dawn tonight. with the community, he's done a lot of things, not just for ski history preservation, but that beautiful thing that you build behind the Catholic Church, the Stations of the Cross. You get out on your little machine and do all kinds of things. I've seen it. At any rate, this is the kind of person we need in our community to help us preserve our history.
Thank you.
And now, Josh, let's get on with the show. This is really the big part.
All right.
Say Chris Clark was?
Well, thank you for all that. I'm going to introduce our speaker here and get us going on the road. Good. Yeah. So John Lundin is a historian, author, and lawyer. He's a founding member of the Washington State Ski and Snowboard Museum. John learned to ski using wooden skis, leather boots, and rope toes. John has written 4 award-winning books. We have them for sale back here for you to pick up. He's helped organize 2 exhibits on ski jumping at the Regional History Museum in Ketchum, Idaho in 2022. And he won the 2023 Western Heritage Prize from the Far West Ski Association. So John, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Getting ahead of myself here. Thank you for coming. What a great turnout. We're going to talk about not only ski jumping, but the heritage of Leavenworth, and there's so much here to be proud of. Were any of you here in December to hear my colleague Lowell Skoog do his presentation? Yeah. We were yeah. I understand it was terrific. We're longtime colleagues. We're co-founders of the Washington State Ski and Snowboard Museum, and he said he really enjoyed being over here. I've given a talk on ski jumping in a number of different places. Most of the time I have to explain what it is. The heritage you have here, it's kind of like talking to the choir, I think. But I have to know, how many of you were here before 1978 and actually saw the ski jumping on Bucky Hill? Terrific. Great heritage. I'll ask this question. Did anyone ever go off that jump? No volunteers? I've given a similar talk a couple times in Seattle to the Nordic Museum and the Leif Erikson Lodge. And when I asked that question about ski jumping, at least half the men raised their hands. So there's still a reservoir of people who participated in that great sport. Jumping right in, I've written a book about ski jumping in Washington State, a Nordic Tradition. That was the companion book to the ski jumping exhibit we did at the Nordic Museum. And I donate my author's profits to the Nordic Museum from that. Josh mentioned the award I got last year. I've done a whole lot to preserve the memories of ski jumping. When I first got into writing about skiing history, I didn't know much about ski jumping. And I was flabbergasted to learn that for 40 years, it was the most popular form of the sport in this country because of our Norwegian ancestors. It was really not until the late 30s that alpine skiing began to appear. Those are my other books, by the way, 2 about skiing in Sun Valley, and then early skiing on Snoqualmie Pass is the history of skiing in Washington State. And I published one other book on Sigurd Hall, but that's only published in Norway. As most people know, skiing has been around for thousands of years. There's a debate whether it started in Scandinavia or in the Altai Mountains in southwest Russia, basically. There was a book written in 2021 that traces the history of it. It was written in French, and that author believes it started in the Altai Mountains and then migrated up to Scandinavia. We Scandinavians disagree. We think we started it. And you can just see some of the older remnants here. In that part of Norway, those runes were found. They date back to 5000 BC, clearly a man on skis. This is Uller, the Norse god of hunting, the Bogstad rune stone in Norway, dating to 1000 AD, basically. And then these skis were carbon dated to 5200 BC. So clearly, in Scandinavia, we have this terrific tradition. Now that is using skis for transportation and hunting. And my focus tonight is ski jumping, which is the fun part of the sport, at least if you're Norwegian. And as most of you know, ski jumping originated in Norway. And the first ski race happened that we know about in the Telemark region, about 1000 AD. And it was basically a slalom course using trees as slalom poles with a couple of jumps in the middle. And in Telemark, they've been doing that for at least 1,200 years. In the late 1700s, the government of Norway decided to encourage ski jumping as a way to provide entertainment and community feeling in the rural parts of Norway. And they started awarding cash prizes, which resulted in virtually every small community in Norway building a ski jump and holding competitions. And there were competitions held all over. And in 1860, a jump of 30 meters was made without sticks and remaining upright, which was, I guess, a big thing in those days. It became really a national event in Norway when the Oslo Ski Club formed in 1877 and held their first tournament in 1879. That has evolved into the Holmenkollen jump, which is known as basically the World Series of ski jumping, held every year in Oslo, and the winner receives the King's Cup. But again, it's important to keep in mind that ski jumping is just a normal part of life in Norway. Getting from one farm to another in winter also often involves a climb on skis up one side of the hill and ski jumping on the way down. The great Alf Engen, he and his brothers were raised on a farm on top of a hill. He said they would ski down the hill every day to go to school. And they would build jumps over fences so they wouldn't have to stop. And that's how they got in their ski jumping practice. And of course, Norwegians brought ski jumping to the New World. And that's because there was a rush of immigration from Scandinavia, generally, the latter part of the 1800s. And you can see the figures up there. Between 1870 and 1910, 1.5 million Scandinavians immigrated to the country, and a third of them were Norwegians. And by 1930, there were 1 million people in the United States who were either born in Norway or had parents who were born there. And nearly half lived in New York, Chicago, Minneapolis, or Seattle, the northern tier. So that's where ski jumping started in this country. And Harold Andersen, in his ski jumping book, said, Norwegians organized ski competitions to strengthen their ethnic ties, showcase their abilities, and generate a new sense of belonging to their new country. And whenever 2 or 3 Norwegians got together, they built a ski jump and held a competition. The first recorded formal ski jumping tournaments here were in the middle 1880s when the Hempstead brothers immigrated and in Red Wing, Minnesota. And the first tournament was held in 1888 with someone jumping 35 feet. And then ski clubs formed all over the northern tier. Again, you can see the dates in Minnesota, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And it said that ski jumping embodies the Norwegian concept of idrett, which means developing strength and manliness through exercise. And by the end of the 1890s, Michigan had 30 ski jumping clubs, each with his own ski jump, each holding competitions. Big step forward in 1905, the National Ski Association was formed for several reasons: to establish uniformity in the design of ski jumps, establish rules for judging ski jumping, which, as you probably know, is both form and distance, and they forbade professionalism. The Norwegians believed that ski jumping was something to do for the fun of it, not for profit. It became sensationalized early. You can see on the left, Barnum and Bailey Circus had a ski jumping event. Very well-known ski jumper, Carl Howelson, who later ended up in Steamboat Springs, was a sensation. And they would set up an indoor or a tent with a ski jump in it, and he wowed people all over the country. And Howelson Hill in Steamboat Springs is named after Carl. I have to say that even though I've done so much reading and writing and research about ski jumping, I've never actually seen a ski jump in person. However, part of the prize I won last year, the Western Heritage Prize, I get a free week in Steamboat Springs, and I'm going next week for their winter carnival. And I'm actually going to be able to see ski jumping live. There was actually a group of Norwegians that formed a professional ski jumping group. Alf Engen and his brothers were part of it, and they went around the country demonstrating ski jumping, not really earning money, but using the money that they were paid to pay for their transportation. And you can see in the lower right there, Engen in 1932 contacted the Cleelum Ski Club, wanting for them to pay for his ski jumping group to come, although they never did. But he competed in Washington later. Anyone want to take a guess about when the first ski jumping event happened and where in Western Washington? Well, if you read my book, you would know it was on Queen Anne Hill in downtown Seattle in 1916, the year of the big snow. And the local Norwegian community, Seattle was paralyzed. The local Norwegian community found the steepest hill on Queen Anne Hill, the steepest street, did a ski jump, and it was marvelous. People were blown away. So the Norwegian community from that point on started presenting organized ski jumping. And the first was from 1917 to 1924 in Paradise and Mount Rainier. And it was held over the 4th of July weekend because there were huge amounts of snow there. And it was said to be only the second place in the world after Finse, Norway, that a summer ski jumping event could take place. And you can see some of the pictures here. That's actually the coverage in the Seattle Times of that ski jumping event. This is a jumper at Mount Rainier. They just made ski jumps out of snow. And from 1924 to 1934, the ski jumping action transferred to Cleelum that had a very active ski jumping group. And this is the top of the ridge 2 miles up from Cleelum. That's where the Cleelum Ski Club had their ski jumping. Now, 1929 was a great leap forward. Other ski jumping groups formed, principally the Leavenworth Winter Sports Club, formed actually in November 1928, started holding competitions. Seattle Ski Club was formed by Norwegians from Seattle, and they put a jumping hill on Beaver Lake, which is at Snoqualmie Pass. And then the Cascade Ski Club from Portland started holding competitions on Mount Hood. And pretty soon there was a circuit. And you can see this ad from the newspaper. This is the circuit. Leavenworth today, Cleelum next week, then Portland, and back to Seattle or Beaver Lake. So you would have the circuit where the same ski jumpers would come week after week, and the same Norwegian or Scandinavian supporters would follow them from place to place. I included pictures. This is up Beaver Lake, which is a 1.5 mile hike up for the pass. And it made use of the natural terrain. This is Leavenworth. This is the giant ski jump at Cleelum. It's said to be 6% steeper than any ski jump in Norway. This is actually Mount Hood. And in 1940, this giant ski jump was built at the Milwaukee Ski Bowl at Hyack. We had the National 4-Way Championship here in Washington in 1940, and the ski jumping competition was held there. So all of a sudden, in the late 20s, early 30s, it spread like wildfire. It was supported by newspapers. That there was no television in those days, so the newspapers were great supporters of this crazy new sport. And it was also supported by trains, which provided the primary access. Northern Pacific provided the access to Cle Elum from Seattle and Yakima. And of course, Great Northern from Seattle and points east to Leavenworth here. And then the Milwaukee Railroad provided access to Snoqualmie Pass. And it was actually their ski area, the Milwaukee Ski Bowl, they opened up in 1938. And these are just some of the great ads that they ran in those days. This is the Leavenworth one. I think that's from 1938. And this is for the National Ski Jumping Championships at the Ski Bowl in 1941. We were not only the center of ski jumping in Washington, but for the country, and we brought all the international ski jumping stars here to compete. And you can just see here the kind of competition we had. There were 9 national ski jumping championships here in Washington, 5 or 6 of them, 6 in Leavenworth. There were 6 U.S. Olympic team tryouts here, and there were 8 national ski jumping records here, although one of them was unofficial. And you can see where they were done and who did them. And 3 were set here in Leavenworth between 65 and 70, when ski jumping was still continuing here where it stopped elsewhere. I love this different perception of what ski jumping is. Anyone see Wide World of Sports back in the 60s and 70s? Well, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. You know what I'm talking about. Anyone who saw that poor ski jumper tumble off the end had to think, this is the craziest sport. Who in their right mind would ever do it? Well, the Seattle Times agreed. They said ski jumping is a breathtaking pastime of risking life and limb on skis. And to the uninitiated, a ski jump is close to a disc-defying act. Warren Miller said, ski jumping takes great courage or low IQ. On the other hand, you talk to ski jumpers, and the person on the right is Torbjørn Jegeseth, who was a Norwegian exchange student at the University of Washington. He won the Leavenworth tournament for 3 years and dominated ski jumping. And he said, there's no danger, there's no fear. He said, you know, if you start at 2 years old jumping off small bumps as I did, you get used to it. And he said, you know, you never go more than 60 miles an hour going down the in run. You don't go over 100 yards in the air, and you're never more than 10 or 15 feet off the ground. And when you land, it's so soft you hardly kick up any snow. So what's the big deal? And you have to realize how tough a sport it was for both the jumpers and the spectators. You know, to get to Mount Rainier, Snoqualmie Pass, Mount Hood, or many of the other places, it was a long drive on icy roads. Leavenworth, of course, was lucky because you could get here by train and then take a bus up to the ski area. And that fact was included in all the Leavenworth winter ski advertising. But we regularly get over 5,000 people at these tournaments who would hike up a mile to Mount Rainier, 2 miles to Cle Elum, a mile and a half to Beaver Lake, and stand outdoors all day, oftentimes in the snow. So they were tough. This is, of course, Leavenworth. You know, once you got here, you could ride, but you had to hike up the hill, and that was a long, steep trek. Even if there was a scaffold, you had to climb up the scaffold time and time again. And this actually shows people hiking into Cle Elum, 2 miles up the ridge. And this was Snoqualmie Pass, 1934. There were 5,000 cars parked there for the tournament. And that's the main east-west highway. That was how popular the sport was in those days. I put this up, on top, there's that wonderful quote from Nansen, who was a famous polar explorer. To see how an expert ski jumper executes a jump is one of the most sublime sights on earth the earth can offer us. And these are just pictures that show the beauty of the sport. And you keep in mind, these were early ski jumpers. They were all using what was called the Kongsberg technique that was developed in Kongsberg, Norway, and dominated ski jumping really into the 60s. And that's Reidar Ulland in Leavenworth. That is Birger Ruud at Spokane Pass. That's Birger Ruud in Sun Valley. Those two are Alf Engen in Sun Valley. And this is Beaver Lake. And the Kongsberg technique was you did a forward bend and you windmilled your arms for balance. And you don't get a sense of the motion from this, but you can see their arms in various locations. There, in fact, were girl ski jumpers in those days, and that's what they're called. They weren't women's ski jumpers, they were girl ski jumpers. The woman here, whoops, going the wrong way. Olga Bolsted showed up unannounced and won the first 1917 tournament at Mount Rainier, shocking all the men. And she was called the champion of the West Coast on skis. And she was very famous, but unfortunately died prematurely in childbirth. This is the Leavenworth Winter Sports Club, 1931. There were 5 events for men and 1 for women. And those are the Leavenworth girl ski jumpers out there. This is the members of the Seattle Ski Club at Snoqualmie Pass. And this is a Norwegian ski girl, as she was called. Came here in 1932. She was a champion in Norway, Joanna Kolstad. When she kept winning too much in Norway, they all of a sudden forbade women competing as men. So she had to come over here and compete. There's sexism everywhere around the world. Here we're getting local. This is the Leavenworth Winter Sports Club, formed in November 1928 and held its first tournament on Wheeler Hill, which is near the present ski location, 1929. And it was a great success. Interestingly enough, toboggan course was probably its most popular event, and there were toboggan courses all over the country in those days. It was a great spectator thing. You didn't have to have the guts to go off a ski jump, but it was very popular here and elsewhere. And 23 members cleared the club, donating 27 days of labor, and $60.50 were contributed. So it was really a community effort. And you can just see a couple of jumpers and what the hill looked like, and then the kind of cars that showed up. In March 1930, the success of that first jumping tournament led the club to believe it needed a more permanent and bigger site. So they obtained a permit in March 1930 from the Forest Service to build 2 ski jumps, 2 toboggan runs, a parking area, a clubhouse, and outbuildings. And that's where the wonderful facility is located now. Sigurd Hansen, who was a national ski jumping champion, supervised the building of the jump, where the Class B hill is now. And it was a roaring success. And you can see the kind of crowds that it attracted in those days. And I don't know if the guy on the right ever went off, but he sure liked posing up there. And in 1933, the Bakke brothers had come to town in 32, I believe, and they supervised the building of a 73-meter ski jump, which was a real serious one. And Earl Little later said, everyone in town donated something: work, material, a team of horses. Those who couldn't work put money in to hire someone who could. And the jump trestle was 240 feet long, made of poles from 16 to 32 feet long, and over 5,000 board feet was used, all carried up the hill on someone's back. And the jumping hill was built for $300 because of the amount of community effort. And the Bakke brothers' contribution to Leavenworth and ski jumping here is well known. They moved here in '32 from Lyngdal, Norway, and became pillars of the community very quickly. In '33, it was said that Hermed redesigned the big hill himself in 2 days of backbreaking labor and built one of the biggest jumps in the country based on the Lake Placid ski jumps. And Lake Placid we used for the '32 Winter Olympics. In '36, the Forest Service and CCC contributed to clearing more area, building the wonderful little building that's there and still in use. Slalom course was put in because alpine skiing was just arriving. And a year or two later, a cross-country course was put in. And virtually every year, the ski jump was enhanced and improved by the Bakkes. And '37 was a big tournament over here. 7,000 spectators came, 2,000 of them from Seattle by the train. And Great Northern was overwhelmed. The people were almost late for the tournament because they had to pack so many people in. And they promised to do better next year. And Great Northern said, remember, no climbing, no walking, whisk right up by bus to the 250-foot hill. So that was the way it was advertised. '38 was important because of the people who arrived. Olaf Ulland was brought over by the Seattle Ski Club, famous Norwegian jumper, first to jump over 100 meters, 300 feet. It's like the 4-minute mile was in the 50s. No one thought it could ever be done, and he was the first to do it. He was brought over to coach. And the famous Ruud brothers from Kongsberg, Norway came. And they're the most famous athletes in the country in those days. The best ski jumpers were like professional quarterbacks now. Everyone knew them, everyone followed their careers. And they came and they did a tour of the country, jumping in tournaments or exhibitions throughout the country. One of the places they jumped was Los Angeles, and you can see in the upper right there, they built that scaffolding in the LA Coliseum and filled it with ice. And they had to climb up and ski down and do that multiple times. That tour was so famous that a master's thesis was later written, Are Norwegian Americans Born on Skis? Exploring the Role of Skiing in North American Ethnic Identity. Here are a couple pictures from Leavenworth in the late 30s. In 1938, the Leavenworth jump was called the greatest in the Pacific Northwest. And 5,000 spectators saw Sigurd Ulland, who was Olaf's brother, a national champion that year, beat Olaf here in a head-to-head competition. And it was very crowded. I love this quote. Ski writer Ken Burns said, Leavenworth is so crammed so full of people that when you try to eat, you may be taking someone else's ham sandwich. And in '39, there was a dearth of snow here, something we know about this year. So that was the Apple Box Brigade. They have to get snow from outlying areas and bring it in and shovel it in boxes and carry it up the hill. And Sigurd Ulland won that tournament, setting a new national distance record to 249 feet. But later that same day, Alf Engen jumped 251 feet in California, snatching the victory away from him. I mentioned the Milwaukee Ski Bowl. It opened in 1938 by the Milwaukee Railroad. It was inspired by Sun Valley being opened by Union Pacific in 1936. It was 2 hours by train from Seattle, had a modern ski lodge. It was lighted for night skiing. It had an overhead J-bar, an overhead cable lift that was called a Sun Valley lift without chairs. And so few people skied those days, the Seattle Times gave free ski lessons to all Seattle high school students. And my mother was involved in that. She had just graduated from the University of Washington. She was teaching at Queen Anne High School. She'd skied in the 30s, one of those crazy people that went up to Mount Rainier and skied in and hiked up and skied down. And so she was head of the Queen Anne Ski Club, and she took her kids up there for a couple of years by train. And in 1939, Peter Hostmark, who was a well-known Norwegian architect and engineer, designed their giant ski jumps for the 40 four-way competition I mentioned. And this was really slick. You can see it here. It had two jumps, a Class A and Class B jump. This is the judges' tower. But it had a lift carrying the ski jumpers up there to the top, which is unheard of. And it actually had a warming hut. So this was state-of-the-art. And that was really the center of ski jumping for the next decade. And on the right, you can see what it looked like if you go off. The few years before World War II is what I call the glory days of ski jumping here. And all the best jumpers in the world came here to compete. We had national championships here, and several national distance records were set. And as I said before, the jumpers were treated like NFL quarterbacks are and followed by newspapers all over the country. And in '39, Sigurd Ulland set a new record here and was exceeded by Alf Engen, as I said, in California. In 1940, Alf Engen won the national jumping championship in Vermont and won the national four-way championship here, beating Torger Tokle in the ski jumping. And in 1941, Alf Engen set a new distance record. Sorry, I'm touching the wrong buttons here. It was exceeded later that day by Torger Tokle in 40. In 41, Torger Tokle set a new distance record here, national distance record, and he broke it 2 weeks later in the national championships at the Milwaukee Ski Bowl. So those competitions were followed all over the country, all over the world, as a matter of fact. So Leavenworth and Milwaukee Ski Bowl, people in Europe read about it. Now, World War II intervened, and we almost lost ski jumping after World War II. Olaf Ulland wrote a long article in the American Ski Journal, lamenting the fact that we're not sure we can proceed, that the old-timers were getting old. They were really getting into the senior category, not the competitive category. And the next generation hadn't stepped in to fill their shoes. The next generation loved to jump, they didn't want to work. So, and it takes a lot of work to prepare and maintain a ski hill. So he was thinking, this sport doesn't have much of a future. But basically, it was saved by Norwegian exchange students after World War II. Norway was devastated by the war, it was very poor, and a lot of universities offered scholarships, and many Norwegians, including Norwegian ski jumpers, took advantage of that. Gus Rahm was one of the first. He was a junior Holmenkollen champion. He toured the United States in 1947 doing exhibitions, and Olaf Ulland talked him into staying and enrolling in the University of Washington. And he stayed, and he encouraged a number of other Norwegians to stay, and they did. He wrote an article about the Scandinavians who competed here, and he said there were at least 56 Norwegians who came and studied in Northwest universities, 41 in Washington alone. The upper right is showing Gus jumping at Lillehammer, where the Olympics were, and that's where my Norwegian ancestors came from, the Lillehammer era. And the lower picture is one I love because it's really the changing of the guard. That was taken in Sun Valley in 1938. Anyone know there were ski jumping at Sun Valley? Ruud Mountain? I wrote a paper on it if anyone's interested. But it had Olaf Ulland and Alf Engen, two of the old-timers who really made the sport here, and Gus Ram and Kjell Stordalen, who were Norwegian exchange students. So here you saw the fading years of the old-timers and the new era of the young Norwegians. Tragedy struck in December 49 when there was a fire at the Milwaukee Ski Bowl. The railroad depot and lodge burned down. They kept it going that winter, but because of the demands for rail transport by the upcoming Korean War, they decided not to rebuild. So Washington lost its ski jumping center and downhill alpine skiing center as well. But Leavenworth stepped up. In 1950, Herman Backe redesigned the Leavenworth jump to conform to the new international standards, making 300-foot jumps here possible, and making the jump one of the best in North America. It was later named Backe Hill for the contributions that the Backe brothers made over the years. And Leavenworth was the center of not only the state, but the national ski jumping fraternity until 1978. In 54, a number of Norwegians left the Seattle Ski Club because they didn't support ski jumping anymore. They formed the Kongsberger Ski Club. They built a facility and a ski jump at Cabin Creek, just east of Snoqualmie Pass. And that whole group not only held competitions, they taught ski jumping, but they became officials throughout the country and the world on ski jumping events. Olaf Ulland was coach of the 56 jumping team in Cortina, where his nephew Reidar was a member of the team. He coached the U.S. team at the 58 World Championships in Finland, and Gus Ram was the team manager. In 1960, the Kongsbergers handled all the jumping events at the Squaw Valley Olympics. Olaf was chief of competition. Ram was assistant chief and helped design the hill. And the Backe brothers were measurers, and a number of other people participated. And at the 80 Lake Placid Olympics, Gus Ram was chief of competition, and Ulland and Magnus Backe were measurers. So our local people played a major role nationally and internationally in ski jumping in the next couple of decades. This, I listed just a number of names of the kinds of people that competed here in the 50s and 60s. Now, probably none of these names are familiar now, but these were the top jumpers in the world. In 1950, the World Ski Jumping Championships were held here. The Nordic Championships were held at Lake Placid, and Aspen held the Alpine Championships. And of the 10 top finishers at Lake Placid, 6 or 8 of them competed here later in the decade. And all the U.S. ski team and jumping team competed here. And again, I won't go through the names because they're not familiar, but these really were the top jumpers in the world. Now, just a couple of important tournaments. In 1955, Leavenworth sponsored the national championships and Olympic tryouts. And Seattle's Reidar Ulland, who was 17 years old and a high school student, won the junior nationals. And he actually had the longest jump in the going against the Class A jumpers and made the 56 team. And that's Reidar on the upper right. In 56, the Class A jump here collapsed because of heavy snowfall. And of course, the Backe brothers jumped in and replaced the whole trestle, rebuilt it, and put in a new jumping judges tower. And that allowed the local ski club to host national championships in 59, 67, 74, and 78. And in 1960, the big hill was lengthened to 90 meters, which made it international class. And that was a top distance for an accredited ski hill. And 60 was a year that the Winter Olympics were held in Squaw Valley, and Alf Ulland, who was in charge of that competition, made sure that many of the national jumping teams competed here in 60. So that was an especially important local championship. In 69, the rain washed out the Leavenworth Hill and it was rebuilt for 1970. So again, high maintenance required for these. And one of the things I learned, I got to know Ron Steele, who was one of your famous ski jumpers. His father was president of the Leavenworth Winter Sports Club for a couple of decades. And he described how the whole community spent most of the year preparing for and putting on those ski jumping events. It would start in the summer, and so much time was invested in repairing and improving the jumps. The women would get involved hosting things, and it really took a community to do it. And you and your predecessors here were responsible for that. Another interesting thing about 1960 is on TV, live TV. So I'm not sure anyone was here to see that, but that was innovative. Here are some of the top ski jumpers. That's Reidar Ulland in the upper left. Jim Brennan, who was a Leavenworth native. He was a national ski jumping champion in 1960 and set a national distance record and was on a couple of world championship teams. That's Ron Steele on the right, and Torbjorn Egeseth on the left. And Brennan, Egeseth, that I said before, won at least 3 of the Leavenworth tournaments and dominated local ski jumping here in the early 60s. And Ron Steele was one of the most successful people. I'll talk a little more about him. The Scandinavians, for a number of years, held a big festival in the summer at the Seattle World's Fair. And in 1965, they actually built a ski jump there from the top of the Coliseum. And you had to be under 10 to compete. And you can see what went in. They used 30 tons of ice and straw bales and chicken wire. There's actually a person playing the fiddle who went off it. And some beauties from Scandinavia were there as well. That was a big cultural event. Mentioned before, halcyon days for Leavenworth between 65 and 70. 3 national distance records were set here. 1965, Alf Engen, who was a 64 world champion, you can see him on the left, jumped 324 feet. In 67, Bjorn Workala, who was a 66 world champion, jumped 335 feet. And the newspaper said, Workala seemed to soar forever. No one in this continent has ever traveled further on 2 slim strips of plywood. And in 1970, a U.S. Olympian set a new distance record of 340 feet. Now, you can see we're evolving away in the 60s from the Kongsberg technique that dominated ski jumping for really 20 or 30 years. And it was so prevalent, and the ski jumpers from Kongsberg were so good that in 1938, 7 of the 16 jumpers at one of our national tournaments were from Kongsberg. Many of them grew up within a block of each other. But here you can see the evolution. In the late 50s, the Poles in particular the Finns in particular started experimenting with wind tunnels. And rather than having a bend at the waist and windmill, they became straight and their arms were held back. So you can see how different it is from those early days of the Kongsberg technique. Here's a bit about Ron Steele. He was on the 72 U.S. Olympic team, graduated from high school here in 72, was the highest placed jumper in the Japanese Olympics. He later starred at the University of Utah and was a 3-time national award-winning jumper. and wonderful guy. And this picture just shows him winning the tournament in '71. This is competing at one of his tournaments, and this is him looking very happy over in Japan. And that great illustration of the new technique you can see there, that was used in the '74 games here. Now we come to the end, unfortunately. In the 60s and particularly the 70s, there was a real decline in interest in ski jumping. A number of traditional ski jumping areas closed. In 1971, Mount Hood closed. And in '74, Revelstoke, British Columbia, and the Kongsbergers closed theirs, and they were closed all over the country. And Leavenworth is having more and more problems putting on its jumping tournaments. Several were canceled because of lack of snow or lack of competitors in '75 and '76 and '77. So, for a period of time, there was nothing here. '78 was the last one, but it was a national junior and open championship, so it was a big one. And it was held in the fog and the rain. And John Bessett from Vermont won the national junior championship. He said, "I've never jumped in the rain before, but I'm having a great time. I like this state." And no further major tournaments were held here. There was a lack of top caliber jumpers. The U.S. ski team stopped subsidizing jumping in the colleges in the mid-'70s. They put all their money into either alpine, but they continued subsidizing some cross-country programs, but not jumping. And in 1982, the New York Times said the loss of interest in ski jumping in the U.S. Was noted, and ski jumping faces a long decline. So the end of a wonderful tradition here that held up for many, many years. Here are your wonderful people who were inducted into the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame, Bakke brothers and Earl Little, all the same year. And I'm sure you're aware of the efforts that Shell Bakke and a number of others made to keep ski jumping going here and resurrecting it. In 1999, there was a study of what it would take to restore ski jumping at a world-class level here. It would take $5 million. They would have to improve the 90-meter hill to current standards. You'd have to install snowmaking, a warming hut, and a new lift. And that was obviously beyond the financial capabilities of the community. So it was never done, although there's a small jump here, and it's still used in a number of local ski programs. You can see the remnants of the hill. There's Shell Bakke. And of course, the 1935 building is still used, and it's a wonderful little ski area. This happened to be my then 6-year-old granddaughter who skied for the very first time in Leavenworth Hill, and it's really a marvelous facility. There are 7 existing Olympic training hills in the country. They're very expensive to maintain, so you have to focus your limited dollars on a few areas. Now, I'm personally not only trying to resurrect the memories of ski jumping here, but I'm going international. And a year ago, I toured the Nordic countries with my brother, exploring our Nordic roots. And we went to the Holmenkollen Ski Museum that's about ready to celebrate its 100th anniversary. It's the oldest ski museum in the world. And on the left there, I met with the director of the museum and donated a copy of my book. And we established a formal relationship between her museum and the Washington State Ski and Snowboard Museum. And we talked about exchanging exhibits in the future. And I offered to come to celebrate their 100th anniversary and doing a talk, Ski Jumping in North America, Norway's Gift to the New World. Again, Georgia wanted me to focus a little bit on the evolution of ski jumping techniques. And here you see the 3. Alf Engen doing the classic Kongsberg technique, bend at the waist and windmilling. This is the next rendition, that's Workala here in 67. Completely straight, no bend. Go as far down on your skis as you can with your arms back. This is the modern one. It's called the V style. And they discovered if you split your skis like that, you get lift. So you're more like a kite than anything else. Now that didn't become popular for a decade or two because people didn't think it showed the grace of the ski jumping that the other ones did. But that's pretty much the one that's used now. You can ski this. You can see by this the difference between the Kongsberg technique and the Finnish technique. This was put together by Alf Engen. Again, you can see the bend at the waist, the windmill of the arms, and bend continuing to the end till you go to telemark. And here's the Finnish technique: arms back, body basically straight, and as far as over the skis as you can. And you maintain that till you land. Now, it's a little after 8. I do have a film here. I don't know if you're interested in seeing it. It's from the 1948 National Championship that does show the Kongsberg style, and Alf Engen and Torger Tokle there. Do you want to take a few minutes and seeing it, or should we wrap it up? Okay. Let's see if we can. Oops. This takes 2 hands. 2 hands and more IQ than I have. I mean, here we go. This is at the Milwaukee Ski Bowl, 1941 National Ski Jumping Championships. And it's an amateur thing, so it's a little fuzzy, but it allows you to see the wonderful Kongsberg technique. There's the lodge. You're looking down the ski hill, and you can see how people, it was all boot packed in those days. And this is the Class C, so these are the younger, less experienced ones. Look at his arms. But isn't that graceful? There's a certain beauty in that technique. But this is a national championship event, so these are the best ski jumpers in the country, and the world for that matter. Alf Engen, you'll see later. Ralph Batia is from Wisconsin. There are 4 Batia brothers, all U.S. Olympians. And Torger Tokle will be shown later, who won the championship. He came in 39 and jumped before the war. He won 42 of 46 ski jumping events. And he was unfortunately killed in April of 1945 fighting in Italy with the 10th Mountain Division. Again, it's all manual preparation. No grooming machines in those days. A lot of work. And that was done here. Before every tournament, it was done here. Class B is a middle division, so they go a little longer. Remember, jumpers were graded on both distance and form, so the longest jump didn't necessarily win. I think these are Class A jumpers. You can see they're more graceful and they go further. But again, windmilling of the arms for balance. So I guess that was Class B. Here's the Class A. There's something like 8 of the competitors in this event later were inducted into the U.S. Ski Hall of Fame. Torger Tokle, he was the best in the world in those days. He was known as a power jumper. He got great distance, but lacked the form of Alf Engen, although he ended up winning this tournament. I think this is Alf with the cap on. We're losing a little of the daylight as it goes, but look at that. Isn't that beautiful? He came in second. Here, Tokle, he set a new distance record and won the tournament. Flying like a bird. If you fall or touch your hand, you're disqualified. That's a picture of Tokle on his winning jump. And you can see he looks a little awkward. Again, he was a distance jumper, so he could jump much further, but he always got marked down on the form points a bit. Well, that's it. If you're interested in seeing more, you go to the National Nordic Museum website. The longer talk I gave on ski jumping is still available. And Kirby Gilbert and I interviewed Reidar Ulland and Ron Steele and got their history of ski jumping and what it was like, and a lot of anecdotes, and that's still available at the museum as well. So thank you. Be happy to take questions. Any questions, or have I bored you to death?
There is a Norwegian ski jumper that's in the NFL Hall of Fame. They jumped in those words. John Lundin in 66.
Oh yeah, yeah.
66.
There were a couple of UW football players who jumped here too. I think Haugen was one from the 60s that was both a jumper and a football player. So those Norwegians could do it all, or so they thought.
I was just going to let you know, shameless plug for Munley and Leavenworth Ski Hill, 5:30s to 7 during normal ski winter hours. The kids 5 to 15 are still jumping up at Ski Hill.
Yeah.
And I think from 3 feet to 80 feet is about
Well, what a great tradition. Good for you. Matt?
And if I can just say, there is a great chance of winning the ski lift tickets over here. And granted, a lot of us aren't look like we're skiing anymore. But I'll tell you what, if you win, you would know someone. That's a great stocking stuff. I'll tell you what, that's a $5 chance. They're going to love that stocking stuffer next year. So thank you.
Jim, let me mention one thing to you. You really need to get the Leavenworth Winter Sports Club recognized formally as an historic ski club. I helped get Sahali Ski Club, my own old ski club, and the Sun Valley Ski Club recognized. And there's such a tradition here. It was so important for so many years, and I'd be happy to help you with the application and work on that. But that's it should be recognized and given this distinction that you've truly owned. Yeah. Thank you all.
Got a question over here.
Oh, excuse me. Yes.
Do the skis change much in the evolution of sport? Did they get longer, wider, the bindings change?
Well, everything changed. Obviously, for many, many years, they were wooden. And there's only a certain design limit of a wooden ski. Now, jumping skis had 3 grooves instead of 2. That gives you more stability once you land. And the modern jumping skis are both wider and longer. And of course, they're carbon fiber and composites. And, pardon me? Yeah, well, and again, they're wider because of the V technique used. You really get lift and soaring. So the wider the ski, the more surface area against the wind. So they've changed dramatically. The bindings have changed, and the boots, of course, have changed. Now, back in the 30s, there was really very little difference between jumping skis and alpine skis. Matter of fact, in 1934, they held the first silver skis race on Mount Rainier. You had to hike for 3 hours up to Camp Muir, and it was basically a straight shush down 5,000 feet to paradise. And technology was so limited in 34 that half the skiers wore jumping skis because they were the longest, most rigid ones. So things have changed. Technology has done many good things for our sport and for our life, and some not so good things. Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to say I went to grade school in Steamboat Springs. And I learned to ski on Howelson Hill, on wooden skis and leather boots. And the whole time we were in Steamboat, we held the ski jumping record of 316 feet, and everybody in town knew it.
Yeah.
And then I learned much later that somebody had broken the record, and it wasn't until quite a while that I found out it was Leavenworth.
But in the 60s and 70s, a new sport started called ski flying, and that was done mainly in Europe, but that was distance only. And they would build gigantic scaffolds. And 90 meters is pretty much the limit for ski jumping, but they'd go to 100, 110. So they would regularly jump in the 400 feet category. But next week when I'm on Howelson Hill, I'll think of your early days there. I'm sure your picture is still up on somewhere there, isn't it? If it isn't, it should be. Well, thank you again.